Now this error is related to me having const here, but even if that's removed, we still get an error. We're getting this error here because I'm using switch screen here when initializing this active screen variable. And this basically happens at the same point of time where this method here is created. And therefore it happens too early. Both this variable initialization and this method creation here happens when this class is turned into an object. So you could say these lines here happen almost simultaneously. And therefore here it's too early to reference this switch screen method because essentially it's not guaranteed that it exists yet, you could say. So how can we work around that? Well, the best way of working around that is to add another method here to this quiz state class, and that would be the built-in initState method. If you start typing, you should get these auto suggestions, and if you complete this function here, this method should be added. Now initState is a method that is in the end provided by this state class, which we are extending, but we can override it to add our own initialization logic. And this indeed is a method that you typically want to add to your state classes, so to your classes that are based on state, to do some extra initialization work when that state object is created for the first time. initState will execute once after this object has been created, and therefore in here you can indeed use all these variables and also reference this switch screen function, for example. But initState will then never execute thereafter again, which makes this the perfect place for some general initialization work. And therefore it's actually here inside of initState where I want to set active screen equal to start screen switch screen, like this. We don't need to wrap this with setState here, and we shouldn't wrap it with setState because this will execute before the build method runs anyways. So therefore active screen will be set to the right value when the build method executes because initState will be executed first by Flutter. Therefore you don't need to call setState here because we don't need to run the build method again because it hasn't been executed at all at this point of time. And up here we therefore now set active screen to nothing, and hence you should add a question mark here to make it clear that active screen can also be null. Initially it doesn't have a value because that will only be the case after initState ran. Which of course is also pretty much the case after the object was created, but technically it's not the case right from the very start the object was created. Instead, initState is just called immediately after the object was created, but technically not during the object creation, which is why technically active screen initially is null, which is why you must add this question mark here. And with that, we can now reference switch screen here, because in here all variables and methods will have been initialized and created. You also should keep this super initState call here, because this makes sure that in the parent class, in the state class, initState is executed as well, to allow Flutter to do its additional initialization work that might be performed in that parent class. And with that, if we now save this and force a reload, we see this initial start screen, which proves that setting active screen to start screen here worked, because it is active screen that is then used down there as a child, and if this would be null still, we wouldn't see anything. So the fact that we see something here proves that it works. And if we now click start screen, we switch to the questions screen. This screen only has some dummy content right now, which is why it looks so broken and ugly, but it actually worked. We switched to that screen, and that proves that our logic here works, that we successfully lifted up state.